Soon after Resident Evil 2 released, Capcom started work on 3 different Resident Evil titles at the same time. One of these titles was led by Hideki Kamiya, who was given the job of working on the next mainline title involving Hunk on a cruise ship dealing with plant monsters and trying to get a G-Virus sample. Capcom cancelled it when the PS2 was announced, so Capcom moved Hideki to the Resident Evil 4 team and promoted a spin-off to keep fans from waiting for a new mainline title. That spin-off became what we know today as Resident Evil 3 Nemesis for the PS1. Resident Evil 3 released on September 22nd, 1999 for the PlayStation 1. Right after Resident Evil 2 was released, Capcom decided to greenlight 3 projects: Resident Evil 3 for the PS1, Code Veronica for the Dreamcast, and Resident Evil 0 for the Nintendo 64. The plan was to have the main series stick to the PlayStation and spin-offs on other consoles. Yamada once again took the reins for Resident Evil 3, and development for the game involved a cruise ship scenario with plant monsters. It was during this time that another spin-off was greenlit for the PlayStation, this one being planned as a side story to the mainline series. The team for this title was small, involving Kazuhiro Aoyama as the director and Yasuhisa Kawamura as the scenario writer. Kazuhiro was involved in Resident Evils 1 and 2 as a system planner and also had a hand in the creation of the 4th Survivor game mode. Yasuhisa worked with Yukito Kishiro on Battle Angel Alita and had just got hired as a writer for Capcom. His first assignment was to check and tighten the story for Dino Crisis. The team for this spin-off also only had a few veteran developers, with most of them working on the other Resident Evil titles. What was the story about this spin-off Resident Evil game? It was going to involve what happened in Raccoon City before and after Resident Evil 2 took place. Some of the mechanics that were going to be involved were making your own ammo, the introduction of the 180-degree turn, and a monster that would constantly chase you. Granted, this was originally going to be a blob that would chase the player. It was deemed too confusing and made the player think it was a different blob every time. This was changed into who we now know as Nemesis. In the end, the game went under different titles in-house. The first being Resident Evil 1.9, then Resident Evil 1.9 plus 2.1, until they finally went with Biohazard: The Last Escape in Japan, and Resident Evil Nemesis for international release. It wasn't until March 1999, when the PS2 was announced, that big changes would happen. Once that announcement happened, Kamiya, who had at this time was the new director for Resident Evil 3, with Yamada deciding to take a system planner role instead, pretty much decides to scrap the project and work on a new Resident Evil title for the new system. At this point, Capcom calls in Kazuhiro and pretty much expanded the project to mainline title. The game's length was increased by another 30 minutes and it had an extra mode added as a reward. Another change, granted this was before the expansion, the game was going to involve only 3 mercenaries. With a small extra line that was added at the end of Resident Evil 2, the plans for using Jill for Code Veronica were scrapped, and now the main character was changed from the mercenaries to Jill. I have very little experience with Resident Evil 3. I've beaten this game a grand total of 3 times. Once a couple years back, again in a live stream a few years ago, which I have uploaded on this channel, and again for this review. I've heard about 3, but I've never played it, because I didn't own it until I picked it up on sale for the PS3. It was an interesting experience then, and an interesting experience now. Alright, story time. We begin with an FMV of Raccoon City in the middle of a zombie attack. Soon, we get control of Joe after one of the best intro cutscenes for a character. We escape into a warehouse where we decide to try and escape the city. We find and rescue Brad from a zombie, and he tells us that there's something chasing STARS members. Soon we head to the station where we meet our new constant stalker and what he's planning to do to us. After exploring the station, we get to explore more of the city. We run into the newest abomination of giant mutant fleas. Then we run into Carlos, one of the 3 mercenaries that were sent in by Umbrella to rescue survivors. After another close encounter, we head to the trolley to meet the rest of the mercenaries, Mikhail and Nikolai. We go out and get all we need to fix the trolley. Once that is done, we end up crashing the trolley into the clock tower. After solving a few puzzles, we get the clock tower to ring and we finally get our escape.
We're saved. Down here! It's finally over. Huh?
Nope. Instead, we get one of the harder encounters with Nemesis, involving a constant, unhealable virus status effect. Sometime later, we control Carlos, who heads to the nearest hospital to get the cure for Jill. During this time, Carlos finds out that Nikolai is the traitor. After more time passes, Jill is back on her feet and continues her escape through the park. After a close encounter with a mutant worm, Jill escapes the park and heads to an abandoned factory, where we encounter Nemesis again. Now, I'm going to pause here for a bit. At this point, you have a very important choice. Each of these takes you to a different ending. I didn't know this going in for this review, thinking the ending was going to be the same for me as last time. But to give everyone a heads up, I was surprised about how this ended. After that encounter, we find Carlos, who finds out that the city is going to be wiped out by a missile. We try to escape the factory. Unfortunately, we need a key card, which is in the trash compactor. We unlock the compactor and have a final stand against Nikolai. Unfortunately, Nemesis doesn't like sharing. We enter the compactor and have another fight with Nemesis. After taking advantage of the acid valves, we find the card and escape. Carlos tells us to escape and try to meet up with him. As we run towards the exit, we have one final encounter with Nemesis, now mutated into an acid-spitting monstrosity. We activate the giant rail cannon in the room and we take him out. As we head for the exit, we get one final choice. Just make sure you have enough time if you want a cathartic ending. We run outside and we find Carlos in a helicopter waiting for us. We escape just as the city is destroyed. Remember when I mentioned that one choice was going to change the ending? Well, if you decide to jump off the bridge, you'll encounter Nikolai in the comm tower, with him in a helicopter. You can either choose to fight or negotiate. Fighting is a dangerous option here, due to him having a helicopter, but this is the only time when you get to fight him head on. Negotiating will have him leave. The story continues as is and you find Carlos outside. A helicopter comes in, cutscene with the city being bombed, and we find out that Barry is the one who rescues us. That is the story for Resident Evil 3. It's honestly one of the shortest runs if you know what you're doing, which I didn't, but it's still enjoyable to go through. One of these days I'm going to replay this to improve my time and score, but if you're wondering why I did this bad, 2 things. 1, inexperience. 3 is my least played of the original trilogy, and it showed. 2, the difficulty. You can choose between easy and hard, and for this review, I did hard. Cue the death montage! Once everything is done, we finally get to see our ranking. And as you can see, I did bad. Originally, I thought the end ranking was just about time and saves like RE1, but nope, it's RE2 ratings. It takes into account of healing too. But I did this on hard for the first time, and I haven't played this game in a while, so that's understandable. Finishing the game unlocks Mercenaries mode, the only extra game mode in the game. We also obtained the boutique key, which allows us to change Jill into different outfits. Unfortunately, the rest require at least a rank to unlock. We also get an epilogue for Jill, explaining what she is doing now after Raccoon City. Originally, I thought these were GameCube exclusives, but no, just beat the game on hard and you unlock these. There are 8 epilogues in total, and you only unlock these by beating the game 8 times. Let's talk about the rewards you unlock. First, the extra game. In this, we get to control one of the 3 mercenaries. Each one has their own unique inventory, essentially each one being a difficulty. The game revolves around each mercenary having an explosive implanted inside them, and they all have to start from the trolley and get to the warehouse pretty much in the other side of town in 2 minutes, consistently killing zombies, increasing the amount of time left. And for the most part, all enemy placements are the same, with a few differences. Win or lose, at the very end you get a rank and money as a reward. You can use that money to purchase unique infinite ammo weapons for the main game. Also, can I say something? Carlos and Mikhail have decent loadouts for this. But what was the thought process for Nikolai? Only a pistol and a knife. I mean, we had Tofu in the second game, but I don't think Nikolai has the extra hit points. The second reward is the boutique key, and this is used in the one building by the bar you meet Brad. Once you enter the building, you'll see 5 dressing rooms. The ones that say closed are unavailable until you unlock them. Entering one will change Jill into a different costume. Besides the original outfit, you can also unlock a biker costume, a disco costume, a police miniskirt, and also Regina from Dino Crisis. Alright, time for gameplay. Same controls as always, but this is where they introduce the now all-important 180-degree turn. To think we could have had this from the very beginning. It makes traversing areas easier and allows us a bit more maneuverability in encounters. This isn't the only addition we get though. We also get a dodge mechanic to the game. This works by pressing either the R buttons or the X button just before an attack to dodge out of the way. For the most part, this works, especially during the Nemesis encounters. Unfortunately, you don't really have that much control in where you dodge, and sometimes I found myself dodging into debris that blocks my escape. Another extra is all the explosives and barrels scattered in the city. You can aim at these and they will kill or heavily damage all monsters around them. Want to quickly aim at these? Well, the game has you covered for that. Holding R1 quickly aims at zombies. Holding R2 aims at explosive terrain. It took me 3 playthroughs to figure this out, and I wish I learned it sooner. Talking about enemies, we do have a few new ones. Earlier I mentioned one of the enemies is a mutated giant flea, but we also have mutated worms, and hunters are making a comeback. The mutated worms also have a giant variant that is a boss later on, but I know what everyone wants to know more about. Nemesis is a unique enemy and boss, in that you don't finish him off until the very end. He always chases you in certain areas, and sometimes it's best to just not engage and run away from him. He has a few attacks, which grow as time goes on, and he has an instant kill move if you're not fast enough. He'll even decide that going for close range won't be enough, and he'll bring more heat than what you will ever have. In easy mode, it's better to just run, because he's mainly there to waste your time. In hard mode, it's the same thing, but there is one difference. Knocking him out gives some very interesting prizes. Oh, he gives stuff on easy too, but on hard, they are so much better. The first 2 times gives you parts to make a new handgun, which is faster and actually has a chance to headshot. The third and the sixth time, the rewards are a box of sprays. And the fourth and fifth times, he hands out a lever action shotgun. The seventh time, and only after the first playthrough, he hands out an infinite ammo pack, which can be combined with one weapon to give it infinite ammo. This also allows it to change between ammo types. Speaking of ammo, we get a new item called the reloading tool. During the game, you'll find A and B powders. These can be combined with a reloading tool to make handgun and shotgun ammo respectively. You can combine these powders with themselves to make more ammo, or combine both to make C powder for magnum ammo. You can also combine these with the grenade rounds to make fire, acid, and ice grenades. Once you've made enough handgun or shotgun ammo, you can start making enhanced ammo, which does more damage. Considering my own playstyle, I didn't know these existed until after I started writing this script. There are quite a number of weapons you can get in this game. Essentially, Jill has a bit more than double than any other character in the previous games. She gets 2 handguns, 2 shotguns, an assault rifle, a grenade launcher, and a mine thrower. So long as you're playing in hard mode, you get the extra handgun, shotgun, and maybe the rifle. The assault rifle is actually a prize for beating Nemesis the 7th time on the first playthrough. The grenade launcher also gets the new ice grenades I mentioned earlier, but I want to quickly talk about the mine thrower. You can think of it as a grenade launcher with a larger blast. If you hit an enemy, it explodes after a few seconds. If you hit anything else, it arms itself and waits for an enemy to walk by before exploding. It's got to be the most unique weapon in the trilogy, and it makes me want to do a playthrough with it for Resident Evil 4. Eventually. The final gameplay element is the choice system. At certain points in the game, everything will pause and you'll be given 2 choices. Each of these will do something different. Best example would be the restaurant choice. Here we're told to hide in the basement or the kitchen. If we hide in the basement, we enter and wait until Nemesis leaves. If we hide in the kitchen, some of these choices can also unlock otherwise unpassable areas. Time for graphics. The engine is the same from Resident Evil 2, so there isn't much to say about looks. The most interesting is that we get to see more of the city. Seeing the city in such an abandoned state with few to no people around makes it very unnerving, especially when you see so many abandoned cars. There is one negative I have to say. It seems like most of the streets are very tight. I can understand some places like alleys, but some areas just don't seem to look right. Looking at it again, it seems like there are some streets that are influenced by some Japanese neighborhoods where it's more of a small two-way street for cars. Finally, let's talk about the music. Again, it sounds great. They really nailed the eerie tone of it, but I think the best music is when there isn't any, especially early on. The only thing you hear is the wind, crows calling from far away, and sometimes someone screaming as they try to get away from the zombies. I'm serious when I say that the music is great. One example, whenever you have to fight Nemesis. It's got a slow beat that makes it sound very threatening with the loud, low tones of brass instruments. For the most part, I just wanted to get out of there. What else can I say about Resident Evil 3 Nemesis? It's good. I wouldn't put it up on the same level as 2 for me, but it's good. Would there be changes I would like? Oh, definitely. And I can easily say that some of them were dealt with the remake, but we're talking about the original here. It has its ups and downs, but it has a lot of replayability. During early points of recording, me dying to Nemesis the first couple of times, I took a different route, and I saw Brad burst out of a room with zombies chasing him. There was also a scene I wanted to record, but it didn't happen during my playthrough, where Mikhail is dealing with a horde of zombies and he just rolls an explosive barrel towards them and blows it up. It's memorable, and I can confidently say that this is a good, memorable game. If you've played this game before, more than likely you remember something about it it's stuck with you. If you'd like to play this version of the game, you can either buy a physical copy or buy it off the PS3 store. Alright. Originally, I wanted to do Resident Evil reviews pretty much this whole year. Unfortunately, I'm starting to get burnt out on them, which is something I want to avoid. If I burn out, I lose interest, and if I lose interest, who knows if I'll ever pick it back up again. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to call this Resident Evil Marathon complete. Not as Resident Evil is done, far from it. What I'm saying is I'm calling this trilogy complete. The fixed camera era. Ugh. Let's just keep going. Who cares? Oh, there are 2 more that I can still fit in this era, but I'll do those at like a later date. What I noticed is that once 4 rolled around, we got games that now follow the over-the-shoulder camera, and that goes on for 5 and 6. Then we got 7 and just recently 8 with first-person cameras. And honestly, something tells me 9 is going to follow this trend, if or when they get started working on it. So the next time I'm going back to Resident Evil, I'm going to call it the over-the-shoulder camera. I've been doing these reviews for over a year now, and this is my first attempt at marathoning a whole series. I also want to explain something that I've been doing for these last couple of games. The reason I haven't put down any spoiler warnings for these games is due to their age and their availability. The original games aren't easy to come by, and granted Resident Evil 1 is mostly the same with its remake. I felt that there were actually enough differences that I wouldn't actually spoil the remake's story. If these games were re-released or weren't restricted to a store page available only on one console, I would have put actual spoiler warnings and timestamps for them. When I start reviewing the rest of the series, starting like 4 onwards, I'll actually start putting in spoiler warnings and timestamps. A few more things. Reviewing the original trilogy has given me more appreciation in not only what Resident Evil has become, but also what let me appreciate just how much the originals have given us. Capcom released 3 wonderful survival horror games for the PS1, even releasing the 3rd in less than 2 years after the 2nd. Not only did this actually let me appreciate what they released back then, but it's going to let me understand just how much the series has changed from this point going forward. The Resident Evil over-the-shoulder era won't be the next thing I review, but I will review Code Veronica and Zero sometime this year, since these also use fixed cameras. But Code Veronica is also part of the mainline storyline. Look forward to that one, because it's also going to be the longest game in the series with this camera style. Next review is also going to be it's also going to take a bit. Hopefully not as long as it took me for this one, procrastination and personal issues. Also, at this point of writing this review, I've also been thinking of picking up streaming again. Hopefully I won't have too many issues, so I'll see you guys on the next review. Later.